And so we've got with us today a nice cross-section of what those ancillary businesses are. And we have a whole lot to cover in 45 minutes. So we're going to have kind of a freewheeling conversation. I'm going to start with Paul Campbell of Leafly and have him introduce himself, and we'll go down the line. And if you will, just kind of take 2 minutes and talk about, let's kind of level set, right? So if you can talk about who you are and what you do, and how big is your company, how many employees do you represent, and what's that footprint, right? So we've got folks who are playing here in Oregon, folks who are playing in the Northwest, folks who are playing all across the country and indeed internationally, right? So talk about that in terms of jobs, in terms of economic might. How big is the ancillary market? And if I'm here at this conference and I'm growing or selling or building brands, why do I care? Start with you, Paul.
Sure, thanks, Dave. So hi everybody, my name is Paul Campbell. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Leafly. And for those of you who may not be familiar, Leafly is the world's largest cannabis information resource. And recently we passed 8 million monthly visitors to Leafly, so with that number we're actually the largest cannabis website, period. And so Leafly's mission is to empower. So we're empowering consumers to make informed decisions about cannabis purchasing. We're also about empowering businesses, so through data and insights and technology packages that allow them to connect with consumers. So we're based up in Seattle. We recently passed, I think, 48 or 50 employees, and things have been a really exciting time for us. And so I'm excited to be here and joining everyone as well.
Where are those employees physically located?
Yeah, so we have the vast majority of our employees are in Seattle, but we also have employees that are remote in places like Denver and California and emerging markets around the country. And then as far as our audience goes, 75% of Leafly's visitors come from within the United States, but increasingly we've been seeing a huge number of our visitors coming from Europe and Spain and Germany and France and Canada and all over the place.
So what kind of jobs are those?
The jobs at Leafly?
Yeah, are these tech jobs, are these sales jobs?
It's all over the place. We have a data science team who's really looking at the data and insights from a business perspective to be able to package up cannabis data and information that's so lacking in the industry today. We also have obviously a team that's really focused on strains. So Leafly has historically been known mostly as a strain resource, but we also have been expanding into products and brands. So we recently launched a products section on Leafly.com where businesses can showcase accessories, and ancillary businesses can really showcase and reach consumers there. So we have a wide variety of folks on our team. We've got people that come from Microsoft and Amazon and Starbucks, and so we've tried to pair really great.
Not necessarily cannabis industry folks.
We've got both, yeah. So we try to pair great cannabis industry experience with also great business sense to be successful. So I think we have a great mix.
Fantastic. Scott, tell us a little bit about what you do and how big your company is.
So my name's Scott. I'm with Click Simply. We're a web design and marketing company. We actually did the website for this conference and most of the online marketing. So we were kind of responsible for the, just in general, taking care of this. So it was really cool. We've got a company of about 10 people, mostly doing like execution style stuff, like they're doers, not necessarily marketers. We found that the more that
That means designers and developers and those types?
Well, not really many of those, like the social media actually, like the marketing side of it, as far as having somebody who's experienced with marketing, looking at the dispensaries, how they're representing themselves online, where they're putting their resources, and making intelligent decisions about that. That seems to be a really big element that we take care of.
And you're focused your business primarily here in Oregon?
Yeah, we're mostly in Oregon, going into Washington a little bit, but we're slowly moving along.
And most of your customers are, you mentioned dispensary owners, so is it a retail play?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a few grow operations as far as people that are like, okay, we have flower, how do we move that a little bit better? Maybe we help represent the dispensaries that the flower is in and things like that. So it's all across the board.
Right. So like Leafly, the retailer really is constrained because of compliance regulations, right? You're not able to take advantage of the full force of mass media. And so you rely on, one, building a website so that you have a place where people can find you if they're looking for you. And then two, making sure that you're tapped into those social media communications channels. So both of you guys are kind of playing the same way. Brandon, you're doing a little different. You're one of those guys that are marketing your products and reaching those retailers through media. Tell us a little bit about Vuber.
Yeah, so Brandon Gallagher, Vuber Technologies, started January 2014, so a little over 2 years now. And we are a personal handheld vaporizer company. It goes from all three spectrums of the cannabis sections, I guess you want to call them, dry herb, wax, and pre-filled cartridges. And so we provide what we consider the best personal handheld vaporizers for those categories at an affordable price. And so one of the things when I started this company that I didn't want to be was just another vaporizer company. And that's what a lot of people ask me all the time. So what makes you different? I think some of those things that I thought of in the very beginning and kind of talking to clients when I was first going out there and surveying the brick and mortar clients was that these guys need more. They're the vaporizer companies that have been out there before me or at the time when I was first going out there on my own weren't cutting it for them. So I implemented a few principles that we still have that have really helped us grow, and one of them was co-branding. So we offer branding for companies like New Amsterdam, Main Street, Clear Choice, that are big clients or clients in general, rec stores, where we give them the prime placement on our vaporizers. And so we take the Vuber off of where we normally have it, put their brand on there, and we put Powered by Vuber on the back. And so that way the consumer knows that it has a lifetime warranty and it's made by a vaporizer company.
Right. So that fits into marketing as well, right? So even though you're really a vendor, different for the first two panelists, you are saying, well, hey, the products that you choose and the inventory that you stock in today's emerging retail environment will set the stage, because many recreational consumers, many legal cannabis consumers are coming into the marketplace really unaware of these new types of products, right? And particularly when you talk about vape technology and you talk about concentrates and wax and shatter and all these things, the further east you go in the country, the less aware they are of what a dab is, let alone have they done one, right? So that's really interesting. Holly, tell us a little bit. You're kind of the last mile. You're literally beyond retail. You're going all the way to the home market.
Yeah, so we're from the East Coast where the stigma is still strong. I'm the CEO and founder of Healthy Heady Lifestyle. Someone called us the Mary Kay of Mary J, and that's probably the easiest way to understand what we do. So it's a Tupperware model where we're educating our consultants, and then they're going in to educate more people. So that really comes down to even what Brandon was talking about with his device. A lot of people don't even know what a vaporizer is. So it's where do they start, and we're trying to break down the stigma, educate as many people as we possibly can, but also create opportunities for jobs or careers in the industry that are a little bit lower barrier to entry.
So tell me, who are you looking for? Like, what kind of employees will you be? Will these be employees? Will these be contractors?
Great question.
How does the Mary Kay of Mary J get its advocates?
So my husband and I actually started this company out of necessity to educate and help other people that we didn't want being taken advantage of. From there, we found that there were a lot of people that wanted to do what we were doing. And so we've built a package, and we're launching nationally in March. We have an early adopter program that's working right now in 6 states. And those are people who have kind of put a lot of faith into us. They don't have replicated websites yet, but those things will be coming. So we're looking for people who are passionate. They're obviously, they maybe don't have a lot of education when it comes to cannabis. That's not a necessity. It's not something that we need. We can
You're calling
educate them.
these coaches don't have to have a cannabis background?
They don't. The consultant coach, representative, the person who's going in home to provide that education and the demonstration and then conduct the sale. We find that a majority of people that come to us, you might all have more knowledge than they do. You know, they're very new to this, but they're seeing this as an opportunity for them to learn and then bring that to everybody else.
So let's continue that, because again, this is an audience of business folks in cannabis, and so my question would be, if I am a producer processor here in Oregon, and I'm going to go for my rec license. I just saw Steve Marks earlier this morning, and I know that there's an opportunity, and I'm going to go and pitch my hat. So how do but I don't really know much about it, right? I don't know much about what is the size of the Oregon market. I don't know where that consumer demand is going to manifest itself. So I have two challenges. One is I got to build a business-to-business network of folks who will help me build and run my business. And two is I need intelligence, man. I need to get my products out to the marketplace, and I need intelligence back saying who's buying what and why and where should I right-size my business to take advantage of that. Let's start with you, Paul, about that listening that you talked about. How would I, if I'm a retailer using Leafly to get my customers, how do I get more than traffic from you?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and it's something that Leafly is really taking very seriously. So I talked a little bit earlier about how historically Leafly's been known as a strain resource. So much in the past year and in the future, our priority will be content. And so we've developed a really large, robust content team led by the former editor at Time Magazine. We also recently had Bruce Barcott join us as deputy editor, a legendary journalist in his own right. And so content for us is both content for consumers, things like education materials. We talked about how confusing it can be for someone coming into the cannabis space for the first time and having all these questions about, what's the right strain for me? What's the difference between indica, sativa, hybrid? Time and time again, we hear from consumers that I'm overwhelmed by the number of choices that confront me when I walk into a cannabis dispensary. So we spend a tremendous amount of effort on the consumer side trying to do education there. On the business side, we actually also are doing business-focused content that's full of all the things you talked about. Business insights about how to run your business more effectively. Data about what's trending in a certain area. So what are the top strains you need to be carrying in your dispensary in Washington? What about Colorado? One of the crazy things we see on Leafly is that products and strains have regionality. So while a business owner might assume, well, I'm opening a dispensary now in Portland, I'll move from Denver to Portland, which we've seen a couple times, they can't just take the same menu and stock the same products there, because the regionality means that what's popular in Denver isn't popular in Portland.
Well, and just continue that thread, which is, and the compliance environment, right, is different.
Absolutely.
So you've got two things. You've got the law, right? What is the federal law? Well, we know what that is. What is the state law? Well, hey, that's evolving, man. These are draft regs that are changing every single day. So I'm making decisions based upon assumptions I'm going to have to validate moving forward. But then the last thing is the local last mile. Because what we've seen in Oregon, what we've seen in Washington, what we've seen in Colorado and elsewhere is that this is a local zoning issue, right? And so there's local sensibilities as well. How do I use the technology to do that? Scott, take that for a second. Why am I on the web, and how am I using that to circumvent some of these restrictions?
So, anybody that's been in this industry for more than 5 minutes knows that the second you want to do any kind of paid marketing, you hit a stone wall of doom. Nobody will do any business with you if you sell flower, just period, of any kind. So what we've kind of discovered is the real value is in the community here, and there's something called game theory, and it's like the concept is the whole is greater when it's working together rather than these individuals out for themselves. Exactly. So we spend a lot of time trying to build partnerships with people and build them up while we build ourselves up, right. and try to not move in the direction that we've seen other people move in, which is away from that model.
So as a web shop, and how, because we're talking about, Leafly is app, but also web-based. How do you help these marketers with limited resources, right? So if I'm starting up business, the money I invest in my web, the money I invest in SEO, the money I invest in marketing is precious to me, right? And I don't get it back. How do you help inform that customer in a draft regulation environment what I can even do on the web? And maybe even throw in a little comment on the Postmaster General here in Oregon, who said, no, you can't advertise any marijuana-related product through the mails. I grew up at Rolling Stone. My folks, friends at High Times would suggest we've been doing that for years. However, the local cop is always the one who's got the most authority.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game we're always playing, which is, you're playing basketball and somebody comes up and says, oh, you can only use one arm. Okay, I can make that work. Okay, you can't wear shoes. Okay, I'm taking your pants. Like, you're like, okay, I'm still gonna play. Like, of course you're gonna make these restrictions. Of course you're gonna be going around and doing that. And that's also, tying back, that's why the community matters, because we can always turn back to each other and go, okay, we've got this, let's actually use it to build.
So specifically, talk to me, if you will, about social media.
Okay.
Because I've seen businesses who have used Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and received fines for doing so. Is there a risk? So as you're telling me, hey, these are best practices, and no, you shouldn't be in the magazines and you can't be on broadcast, so let's use the web. Am I still going to get in trouble maybe? And how do you help your customers understand that?
So once again, you're playing by these very unreasonable rules that no other industry has to play by. And as long as you realize that, it's fine, because you're not trying to get something that you shouldn't have. As far as social media and marketing and from that angle, it's just using the power of social media, which is the networking ability, to tie in and get the marketing from that end. We also do a lot of effort in the search engine kind of side of things, because we actually have partners that we can do search engine optimization with and get the traffic rather than having to buy Google Ads, for example.
Right.
And that
Which
seems to be
you
working
really
well.
can't do.
Exactly. So you do run a risk. I haven't seen anybody fined, but we did set up some
I
rules
have.
that we follow,
I
and when we actually saw a dispensary go in behind us and break those rules, and they did receive consequences for that. Their whole page was deleted, and we're like, we told you not to do that. So there are rules you have to play by, and you have to be very careful. And when you do that, when you collar inside the lines, you can do as much as you'd like inside the lines.
So Brandon, talk a little bit about the two topics here are, how do I use my vendor relationships, right, to gain knowledge of what I should have in my retail store. So that's as a listing post. And also now proactively, you're suggesting through co-branded merchandise, I might be able to do some affinity marketing, gain some loyalty. Hey, I've got a pen that says XYZ store on it, so I'm gonna go back there to get it refilled. Tell me a little bit about how you as a traditional vendor are moving into that arena.
Yeah, I mean, it's all boots on the ground. That's what's got us here. That's what separated us from other vaporizer companies. A lot of other vaporizer companies are more e-commerce or driven, or they'll call, clients will call that vaporizer company and get an order sent. We're in their face. We're gonna see them. We're gonna see our clients at least once a month, hopefully twice a month, and potentially with two different people. So we are all about education. So we get all of our feedback from our guys out there in the field, and when we take that feedback and we turn it into better vaporizers, increase the technology, have higher tech vaporizers, improve vaporizers, improve our brand through that feedback, and use education to make sure that the consumers know how to use our vaporizers, know how the bud tenders know how to sell our vaporizers, know how to, they understand, what Vooper is and why it is hopefully what they think better than other vaporizers.
We're not a competitor. So you're doing that B2B, and Holly, you're doing that B2C. So how do you do that? Now you're talking about a national footprint, running these, these home parties, experiential purchasing environments. And in each market it's different, right? And the appetite is different. So how are you working with your individual vendors? Let's say Vuber is, and I don't know if they are, but they should be, and if not, you guys should do a deal. Is sold through your network, but how are you providing feedback to the Vubers of the world that says, hey, here's what the consumer doesn't like this model, or thinks it leaks, or whatever the thing may be? Is there a feedback loop? Is that part of your service?
Absolutely. We have a lifestyle brand play as well as a data play, and Vuber, although I actually have seen his product and it's been introduced to me, we get reached out from many products and or services that are looking for us to carry. You talk about social media, we're actually just taking it back to what social media used to be, getting into a room and actually conversing with people. It's the true social network. So we're really using that grassroots approach, as you mentioned too. It's the boots on the ground. It's the individuals that we have conversations with or that have gone through that experience. Then word of mouth kind of works where we're.
And what kind of education are you doing? Are you teaching people to roll joints, or how to volcano works, or how to refill their pen? Or
That's a great
how
question.
granular do you get?
So we try to go very basic information, and it's customized to the experience. So obviously there's that Cannabis 101, like what's THC, what's CBD, indica sativas and hybrids, very kind of basic information. But we also will take it to the next level depending on what the host wants. I can't tell you who we're working with for our educational piece, but this isn't us going out just to find the information and just pulling it into the internet and just saying, repackaged, it's ours. We're working with Steep Hill Laboratories to make sure that when we tell you if a terpene is released at a certain temperature or THC is released at a certain temperature, that's just not us. That's actually Steep Hill that's done that testing for another
So you're the
laboratory.
platform, you're not really the content, right?
We disseminate the information.
You're
So we
just-
represent, PAX, Volcano, top-of-the-line devices, soon to be Vuber, the best of the best. There's a ton out there, as you mentioned. The vaporizer market is very flooded. There's a ton of devices, and they vary, but how do I know what's the best one, or how does my mom or my grandmother know what's the best one?
That's right.
So this gives them the opportunity to really go through. So from a B2B side, obviously we see a lot of people who want us to carry their products in our distribution channel. And then from the B2C side, it's really making sure that they have that education at their fingertips. And then the sales conducted in the privacy, which privacy is big for a lot of people.
And so what that sales data, is that aggregated and published out to say, here's what's selling in what categories, or are you holding that?
So we're
close
holding
to
it
the
really
vest?
close right now. We've been approached by some of the data companies that recognize that we're going in-home, so we're capturing a different demographic than traditionally is going into the brick and retail stores.
Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah, because it's a whole different, Brandon says, hey, in order to influence this sale, I talked to a retailer this morning and he said, in the old medical days, we'd hang out with patients because there'd be 5 of them in there. They could ask all the questions they wanted. Today, in the rec market, man, we want turnover. This is McDonald's. I don't want to ask any questions. And oh, by the way, I don't think I'm even allowed to say anything, right? And so you're trying to get in that 5-minute turnaround as I'm looking at vape pens, right? In that time, that bud tender, who is the arbiter of taste and style, he's going to say, hey, I like this one, I recommend it. And mostly he's doing it because the vendor educated him. The owners aren't educating them, right? There is no process on that. So let me go back down to Paul. You guys started out, you were the first ones in the New York Times. You're backed by Privateer. You've got this great bankroll. You're playing internationally, but you started off on strains, right? And the world's changed a lot in the last 3 years, where it used to be, let's try to educate the consumer about indica versus sativa versus hybrids, and then there were strains. But now we find, hey, strain Blue Dream here is not the Blue Dream I'm getting up north, and so it's really migrating into a brand sensibility. So how do you start with hundreds of producer processors, right, who only have a fraction of retailers because they're constrained in their production, they only have a certain footprint? How do you, as the big guy on the block, help me build my brand first state by state and then nationally or internationally?
It's a big question, and it's something that we take really seriously. So you mentioned the New York Times ad we did last year. We became the first company to take out a full-page New York Times ad, and our traffic has continued to grow dramatically since then. But the reason that we feel so strongly about doing things like a New York Times ad is because we are now facilitating connections for businesses and helping businesses to run more effectively by connecting with the community on Leafly of 8 million people who come to us every single month, and they have questions about what do I buy and what's the right thing for me. So it's really about facilitating that connection with consumers for business people on Leafly. So we're continuing to push the envelope. We alluded to some of the challenges on social media marketing. We help to fill in the gap there. And we're also doing things like we became the first brand a couple months ago to do a multi-market billboard campaign. We were on the radio with Clear Channel. We're currently talking with Facebook and Google about doing this the right way and helping to push this whole industry forward. In addition to that, we just did a comedy tour with TJ Miller from Silicon Valley. So trying to do things that help bring cannabis into the mainstream.
But again, so I'm a local brand, I'm just starting, how do I, besides I'm gonna buy in, right, so absolutely I'm gonna advertise and I'm there, but now how do you help me? Because many of these businesses are nascent, they don't have the sophistication of a more mature market, so we don't know what the average consumer behavior is. We can't say this is how you should run a retail location, this is how much you should spend on marketing, or what you can expect in terms of turnover or purchase behavior, that kind of thing. How do you help me to differentiate my store, or if I'm Voogle, or if I'm a brand of cannabis, my product?
Yeah, so
right?
That's a huge part of what we do, is giving people that platform so you can have individual brand pages, or if you're a product, you can have a product page to showcase it. And the vast majority of
So
people
that's almost what they call native advertising, or kind of advertorial sponsored content? Is that what you're moving towards?
Absolutely, native advertising, sponsored content. There's a wide variety of packages we offer, but by and large, it's about connecting people with consumers who are ready to buy. 65% of Leafly's traffic comes on a mobile device, and mobile people are in this mobile moment where they're ready to purchase.
That's right.
And so for us, it's about taking those people who have raised their hand and said, I want to buy, and then connecting them with the right product. So one example that we did was a storage device company came to us and said, I want to connect only with consumers who are really interested in storage. So through the granularity of our targeting on Leafly, they were able to do a targeted ad buy and just target people who've expressed interest in storage. They invested, I think, $5,000 and sold $50,000 worth of units in a day. And that's just one example.
So you're building those case studies to help folks saying these are similar category challenges, and we can help you do that. So Scott, talk a little bit then about, in addition to externally distributed content, how do I figure out what to invest in a website, and how am I going to use my web or my social presence to actually build a brand, to actually, and what are the metrics for me to look at so that I know I'm balancing my budget? How do I know what the return on that investment is?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We actually spend a lot of time working on analytics and things like that to make sure that we know the traffic and where it's going and what it's doing. One of the larger things that we see a lot of people kind of skipping out on, that I think I can definitely stress this, and this is something you should be doing, is interacting with your customers wherever they are. It's having an empty Facebook or Yelp page that has nobody talking there, which I've seen dozens of times, is like having a customer asking a question and you just ignore them.
That's right.
So at the very least, you should be on these platforms interacting with the people that are coming, because if you open a storefront, people are gonna walk in, just wander in, and it's showing those people your value and interacting with them on a human level that actually creates the bond and builds your brand over time, rather than what most people do, which is ignore them.
Right. So you're talking about starting a conversation, and if you start a conversation, you have to continue that conversation, or otherwise people think there's no one at the party and you must have folded up tent. Right? So, but the challenge is, again, within these environments, the margins are really small for these entrepreneurial companies. And so if I'm mom and pop and I've got my store and I'm in it for the plant, man, and I've been an advocate for a long time, but hey, let's make some dough and let's normalize this culture, right, motivated. I didn't know anything about publishing content. I don't know anything about social media, and I don't have the wherewithal to hire a professional to be my, tweeter on demand.
Yeah.
How do you counsel those folks? How am I supposed to afford that when margins are still pretty small?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We definitely look into a lot about the affordability and making all of this work, and even without approaching us for services, something I would say is have analytics on your website, because we can largely tell, like, okay, the traffic is coming from Facebook or Twitter or these other websites that you're interacting on to justify that effort. And so it tells us, okay, we did XYZ thing on Facebook last week. Let's see what that actually did. And it lets you see what's actually going on. And,
So you talked about analytics. You're delivering analytics to your customers?
Absolutely.
Right. And how do those are analytics you're making up, or I mean that you develop, not making up as if you're not true, but I mean there are no published, right? We don't have the metrics, the key performance indicators, although we're trying to get that in Washington, trying to get that a little bit in Colorado, but here there are no numbers yet, so I don't know how my operations might compare to the benchmark or to others in my similar situation. How do you help me understand that?
So the VP from Leafly actually had a really good point, which is depending on where you are, you know, this amount of traffic or that amount of traffic might be normal. So there, like you're saying, there is no baseline of like, this is normal and this isn't. So what we do is essentially standard website analytics, which is where do, you know, if I had 100 visitors last week, where did those people come from? And we can tell you 10 people came from Facebook, 2 from Yelp, 3 types
So
of
you're
web address.
validating my investment in Leafly, you're validating my social media spend or anything like that?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So Brandon, how can you be as a B2B partner, right? You're a vendor, you're out there, you're selling your product. Again, much of what we're talking about is a nascent industry where vape technology is changing all the time. Right? There are real big stories that are making headlines in this industry that touch vape, the pesticides, the contaminants, the recalled product, that is everywhere, right? So you're the guy that represents this new category that many of us old hippies don't know about. How are you answering and how are you empowering your sales guys to talk about things like leakage of cartridges or Chinese technology and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a process. You know, again, it goes back to the boots on the ground approach, getting the feedback from our clients, getting the feedback from our consumers, because we have lifetime warranty, so we get a lot of like, hey, the battery.
All your products have lifetime warranty?
Yeah, so we have a lifetime warranty on our products, so we have a whole warranty department that we have pictures coming in of the product. Hey, this one doesn't charge anymore, or this one I couldn't get it to work for some reason. So
right.
We get a lot of analytics that way. We also have our own analytics guy, literally just for that.
So he knows what's selling market by market and where the trends are.
Yeah, the different states.
Right.
Right now we're trying to get have the stranglehold on Washington and going to Oregon and Colorado, and then next up is California, Arizona, Nevada, and then on to the next 50 states after that. But
you got a big year.
Yeah. So, well, that's by 2018. So the national brand and push, we'd love to have done that, this year or last year, but we want to do it the Vuber way, which is organically, and so thus far it's been boots on the ground. There hasn't been much marketing. There hasn't been much, social media. We got a new PR guy, and we're working on that going forward. We're going to do a lot of marketing in the future, but it's been boots on the ground approach where we're out there and talking to our clients, gaining analytics, getting feedback, testing everything. We have a guy just focusing on product development as well, R&D, and so that's really what it comes down to, is having the best product.
You'll be manufacturing your own unique product
and coming out with proprietary products, so where we can actually patent it, because China copies everything, and so China's a pain in the butt to me, and I got to deal with them a lot, and you got to literally wage your whole business on how their process goes, and if they screw up, your client, especially if you have a co-branding order, because your client is probably not gonna be your client anymore, or you could be a big order that we ordered, and we either have to not sell that or find a way.
Or move on to something else.
Yeah.
Holly, let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about how big is the ancillary market. You know, we talk about this being the fastest growing industry in America. Is 80% of the profits and money in the ancillary game? And then number two, tell us, because I know your story, but for the benefit of these folks, tell us how you got financed, and is it easier, because it's almost impossible to be a cannabis company to touch the plant and get any kind of commercial credit, right? And so it's nearly impossible. Is it easier if you're an ancillary business, or is it still fraught with challenges? Can you still be shut down by nervous banks and skittish investors?
Your first question, obviously, I think it was 2014, the #1 Google word was vaporizer. So there is a huge demand.
It
for
was
the vape.
Webster's word of the year. Yeah.
Webster's word of the year. So I think the ancillary side of things, and for any business, you know, when you can solve a problem, that's like the best way to start a business. Like, what's the item that we're all facing in this industry? How can I create something that will either solve that problem or make it easier for those people? I think there's a huge opportunity for more businesses to come into this space. We're starting to see, obviously, a big jump from traditional companies where we're getting some folks from the Fortune 500 world that are saying, wait a second, you might be right about this whole cannabis thing, and I'm ready to jump ship now. So I think that that's going to open up a lot.
But tell us your story specifically,
so-
because you've got a really interesting story.
So my husband and I started bootstrapping this company back in Massachusetts, and we were going to continue on our plan that way. We came across this company called Cannabis Boulder. It's an accelerator for cannabis businesses, but ancillary only, so you cannot touch the plant. We found them online. It was right after I had ran into the D'Angelo brothers at the Emerald Cup. And ArcView is part of Cannabis Boulder. So when you're investing, ArcView is kind of the group that you'll hear about a lot as far as the investment side, and investors, accredited investors come through that organization. So we had the opportunity going through at Canopy to then pitch at an ArcView event. So I went to Denver, I think was the first ArcView event. I got an opportunity to pitch there to about 300 or so individuals in the in the room. And I was awarded with the Best Pitch Award, which was a fantastic experience because a lot of people really liked our Mary Kay tag. They understand what we were doing in the industry. But I was a little bit disappointed because I wanted someone to come up with a bag full of money and say, you did such a great job, now we're going to fund your company. That wasn't what the case to be, although that gave us a lot of great exposure. We were able to secure some funding through the ArcView investor group. We are still continuing to fundraise. I've heard from people in the tech space that this is the hardest industry to raise capital in, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But it is absolutely a challenge, and I think that there's a huge amount of education when it comes to the investor. There's a lot of individuals that are looking to get into this space, but they don't even know what a vaporizer is.
So you're saying that you, even being an ancillary, a home market sales thing, that you're still unable to go to Chase, and I'm going to beat up on Chase a little bit.
Yeah.
They were just in the news for kicking out Green Flower Media, right, for trying to educate the population, and for being so successful, they're rewarded by losing their bank account. So
you still have the problems.
Yeah.
Banking, credit card processing, dirty looks, it all is still there, even though you're not touching
Dirty
it.
looks. And the further east you go, the worse it gets.
Yeah,
right?
it's the cold.
No dirty looks here in Oregon.
Everyone's really
No dirty looks. All right, so we're at the end of our time, but I want each one of you guys to take a minute or two and tell us the importance of your company and the ancillary market to people who do touch the plant here in Oregon, and why should I care and how do I play? Start with you, Paul.
Well, yeah, I just want to reiterate that Leafly, we see ourselves helping to guide this whole industry forward and really helping both consumers and businesses. So we're super excited to be launching a lot of new products and brands. We've got some really exciting innovations that are be coming out in this space. And one of the things our CEO talks about a lot is innovation. And we all know that innovation is bred by challenges. And as we just talked about, this industry has some of the biggest challenges out there. So we're really excited to be bringing innovative technology solutions that are going to really help businesses run more effectively, as well as consumers to be more educated. And appreciate you guys having me here.
Fantastic.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Just take a couple of minutes and, you know, what should we leave at the end? Because we're going to see a lot of exhibits, meet a lot of people. Why did I care? What do you mean to my cannabis business? And how do I use you to help build my franchise?
Okay, so the biggest thing, if I could just impress you with one thing, is own your customers. And what I mean by that is have their information, have a newsletter, have your Facebook page with all of your followers. It's these things that will allow you to maintain the business through the thick and thin. Because I've seen so many times things fall through, and it's, you know, the email list that you fall back on. And, you know, obviously that's a service we provide, but, you know, MailChimp, like, do these things, because as time, you know, goes on and other things come and other things go, things like a mailing list won't. You'll still have that, and you'll still be able to sell to your customers. And I think that's it. And again, like he said, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, I think focusing on improving our technology, constantly coming out at least every quarter, every 2 quarters with new vaporizers, relationship building new relationships in Oregon here, if we're talking about Oregon, and forging existing ones, because really, you know, we're all in the relationship building business, and education. Education is a big one, and educating the bud tenders, again, the clients, the consumers, on why our vaporizers are, you know, affordably priced, or they're a great product for that price, or why it's you know, better used with this material, or for producer processors, cultivators, or growers. That's a big stream of our revenue. Which atomizer to use. We use a viscometer to test the viscosity of their oil, and we can recommend to them, you know, this is the atomizer you can use, instead of, oh, I just want that one, you know. You know, so it's really about working with our clients, consumers, and educating and building relationships.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to let me tell you guys all about Healthy Heady and what we're doing. I'm a very passionate person, and I believe 100% in this plant. And this is the people's plant, and this is the only opportunity that we will have to affect the current industry and market. So at Healthy Heady, we're building this platform to disseminate and educate and provide information to people. And we really feel like we can get a lot of people involved in this industry through our program. So we're here, just as many of you are, to support and continue to move this industry forward in the best light possible. Green Flower Media, you know, getting Chase on all of these issues that we have as a community. The synergistic effect, we are all greater in the sum of as individuals, and we come together as a whole. It really does make a difference. So that's what I'm here for, and I thank you again for the time. And check out Healthy Heady online and on social media and Facebook and Mass Roots and everywhere else. And
Fantastic. I like it. So I'm just going to wrap it up by saying, you know, these folks that are in front of you as cannabis businesses are not just your vendors, but they're your partners. Right, so as you've got your heads down in this emerging industry, and you should have all of your attention focused on building your brands and building your businesses and understanding your bottom line, right? So a lot is happening. It's very dynamic out there in the marketplace. These guys are your partners because they're cross-pollinators. While you sit in your little you know, labs and in your shops, these guys are going around the state, they're going around the country, they're paying attention to the trends, they're understanding the consumer, the ever-evolving and dynamic consumer demand, and they're on top of the regulations. So these guys can help you understand your customer, understand what products you should be selling or making, right, where the demand is, and they're your channels to help you then manage your customer relation management, right? So we do not have the full spectrum of marketing and communication tools because we're so highly regulated. So these guys are your partners. I'm going to suggest that picking your partners is maybe one of the most important things that you do. I would suggest you spend some time as you're picking your vendors, as you're picking your communications and marketing partners, that you sit down together and understand what your goals are. What do you need to know as you go quarter by quarter, as you're starting to look at your bottom line? these guys will be, and gals will be out there in the marketplace understanding that they're the early indicators. So they're your friends, and I thank them for being here, and I thank all of you for being here today.
Those of you